Hamburg. I have the privilege of serving as the United States Attorney for the Middle District of Florida. As the United States Attorney, I serve as the Chief Federal Law Enforcement Officer for 35 counties here in the Middle District of Florida. I'm pleased to be joined by my partners here today for an announcement of one of our cases, and I'm going to introduce those who are with me on the stage, and I'm going to go from your left to right. We've got Florida Highway Patrol Major Chris Blackman. We've got Orange County Sheriff's Office Under Sheriff Mark Canty, Seminole County Sheriff's Office Chief of Staff Brian Byer. We've got Castleberry Police Department Chief Larry Krantz. We've got Secret Service Assistant Special Agent in Charge Pedro Escadon. We've got IRS Special Agent in Charge Brian Payne, DEA Special Agent in Charge Deanne Reuter, Orlando Chief of Police Eric Smith. We've got Group Supervisor from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, Brian Page. We've got Volusia County Sheriff's Office Chief Deputy Brian Henderson. We've got from the Kissimmee Police Department Acting Chief Wilson Munoz. From the Winter Park Police Department, we have Lieutenant Lisa Supat. And from the St. Cloud Police Department, we have Deputy Chief Kirk Zilke. I'm proud to be here today to discuss how these local and federal investigators working in partnership have dismantled a major drug trafficking organization that operated here in Central Florida. This organization was led by Dzinski Poole. Over the course of over 6 years, Poole and his conspirators brought thousands of kilograms of methamphetamine and fentanyl into this community in Central Florida to be distributed here and elsewhere in the United States. There were 3 different ways that this drug trafficking organization transported drugs: planes, trains, and packages. Let me first start by talking about this drug trafficking organization's use of airplanes. Every year, tens of millions of passengers use the Orlando International Airport. In recent years, among those passengers were members of this drug trafficking organization who transported large amounts of methamphetamine and fentanyl on commercial flights from California to Florida. These flights were typically between Palm Springs Airport or Los Angeles International Airport in California to the airport here in Orlando, Orlando International Airport. Poole would give the couriers between $100,000 to $200,000 in cash. The couriers would take that cash, put it in their luggage, and fly to California to purchase the drugs from the source of supply located there. The couriers would then fly back to Florida with their check bags full of drugs, usually methamphetamine. A review of flight records for a 2-year period has resulted in the identification of more than 350 flights taken by the conspirators during the course of the conspiracy. That equates to at least 100 round trips from Florida and California. During the course of this investigation, agents have seized over 70 kilograms of methamphetamine and 2 kilograms of fentanyl from suitcases of conspirators who had taken some of those flights. But this drug trafficking organization had more than one way to transport drugs. A second way was by using trains. In April 2022, one of those trips ended up with a courier being arrested with more than 4 kilograms of methamphetamine in a suitcase at a train station in Virginia. That courier is being prosecuted by my office in Ocala. And a third way that this organization transported drugs was by packages. As part of their operation, members of the conspiracy here in Central Florida received hundreds of mailed packages of methamphetamine from California and other drugs, including fentanyl, from China. The California source of supply shipped packages containing anywhere from 1 to 10 pounds or more of methamphetamine at a time. Investigators have identified almost 400 packages that were shipped from California as part of this conspiracy from 2021 to 2023. Agents have seized some of those packages, and each of them contain between 6 to 7 pounds of methamphetamine per package. In addition to trafficking in methamphetamine and fentanyl, the members of this drug trafficking conspiracy conspired with one another to engage in money laundering. Members of the conspiracy used drug proceeds to pay for various expenses of the drug trafficking operation, and they engaged in other financial transactions to conceal the drug proceeds. One example involved Poole and his use of an entertainment company that promoted concerts. Poole sometimes would pay for some of the expenses for those concerts by using drug proceeds. And once the tickets were sold and the proceeds were earned, Poole would then use some of those proceeds from those ticket sales to deposit into an account that he had for a business where there was already drug proceeds commingled with it. For over 6 years, this organization trafficked in thousands of kilograms of methamphetamine and fentanyl. Thousands of kilograms that were intended for distribution here in Central Florida and elsewhere in the United States. But not anymore. Through the excellent work of the investigative agencies on this case, 17 defendants have been charged by a federal grand jury. 14 of those defendants have been arrested, and investigators are looking for the remaining 3 defendants to arrest them as well. This has been a comprehensive investigation. The defendants who have been indicted include members of the conspiracy at every level: the leader, his key partners, the source of supply, the couriers and those who directed the couriers, and local drug dealers who distributed the drugs that came here to Central Florida. In addition to the arrests that have been made in this case, investigators have seized over 100 kilograms of methamphetamine and fentanyl. Those law enforcement actions have undoubtedly saved lives. According to the most recent report by the Florida Medical Examiners for 2021, fentanyl and methamphetamine ranked first and third in the state of Florida in causing drug deaths. By stopping over 100 kilograms of methamphetamine and fentanyl from being distributed in Central Florida and elsewhere in the United States, the investigative agencies on this case protected everyone in this community and in this country from those dangerous drugs. This is a complex investigation involving a drug trafficking organization that transported thousands of kilograms of drugs across the United States over the course of several years. This case is what we call an organized crime drug enforcement task force case, or we sometimes refer to it by its acronym, an OCDETF case. In an OCDETF case, investigators and federal prosecutors work together to identify and dismantle the highest level criminal organizations that threaten the United States. These cases require meticulous work by excellent investigators to put together the evidence that will support prosecutions that will reduce the availability of illicit narcotics in the United States. The investigative agencies that work on these cases, they must be of the highest quality and the highest caliber. They have to have the resources, expertise, and commitment to conduct the type of long-term enterprise investigations that are needed to disrupt major drug trafficking organizations and dismantle them. And that's what we have with each and every one of the agencies that has worked on this investigation. I want to commend them for working together as a team to develop the evidence that has led to the federal indictment in this case. Through their excellent work and partnership, 17 defendants have been charged with 1 count of conspiring with possession of intent to distribute methamphetamine and fentanyl, as well as 1 count of conspiring to engage in money laundering. 2 defendants have also been charged with additional counts of possession with intent to distribute methamphetamine. The allegations in the superseding indictment charging the defendants with these crimes and the allegations that I've mentioned here today that are covered in court documents, well, they're just that. They're allegations. And each of the 17 defendants is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty. The charges in this case, the federal charges in this case, are serious, Each defendant is facing up to life in federal prison. This case is a great example of how local and federal investigators are able to effectively work together to protect our community by dismantling a drug trafficking organization at its source. I'm here today to commend the agencies on this case for their outstanding work. Through their partnership, they have protected this community by dismantling a drug trafficking organization that is alleged to be responsible for transporting thousands of kilograms of drugs into this community since 2017. Let this be a message to anyone who illegally conspires to traffic in methamphetamine or fentanyl in this community, or who conspires to engage in money laundering involving drug proceeds. As you can see from the law enforcement agencies here today, you will be investigated. And if you send deadly drugs into this community, our agents and investigators will use every lawful tool to hold you accountable for your crimes, no matter where you live or where you operate. And if you have violated federal law, the United States Attorney's Office will seek to prosecute you in federal court. We are united together in our mission to keep our community safe. And let me make one point particularly clear about any drug trafficking organization that seeks to use airplanes flying into the Orlando International Airport to traffic in drugs. Earlier this year, my office charged a defendant with transporting more than 16 kilograms of drugs on a flight into Orlando. Last week, my office charged a different defendant with attempting to import more than 3 kilograms of cocaine on an international flight into Orlando. And this week, my office has unsealed this superseding indictment, charging 17 members of a drug trafficking organization that used the Orlando International Airport to transport thousands of kilograms of drugs into this community. As the defendants in all of those cases have now learned, the agencies who you see before you are committed to stopping the flow of drugs through the Orlando International Airport. And I, as the United States Attorney, pledge that my office will continue to commit its resources to prioritizing the prosecution of anyone who attempts to bring drugs through the airport. It will be our priority to do our part to help stop the flow of drugs through the Orlando International Airport. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to DEA Special Agent in Charge, Deanne Reuter.
Good morning. Thank you, U.S. Attorney Hamburg, for bringing us all here together today. I am Deanne Reuter, the Special Agent in charge of the Miami Field Division for the Drug Enforcement Administration. I'm incredibly pleased to be here this morning for this announcement. The drugs seized in this investigation are some of the most dangerous, most destructive, and most addictive substances we have today. Fentanyl and methamphetamine are the most urgent drug threats facing our country and our Florida communities. According to the latest provisional numbers from the CDC, over 110,000 Americans have died from a drug-related overdose or poisoning in the last 12 months. These 110,000 losses are our mothers, our fathers, our sons, our daughters, and our friends. And these drugs don't discriminate. Tragically, the majority of the deaths that were caused in America were from illicit fentanyl, or a mixture of a deadly dose of fentanyl with another illicit substance, like methamphetamine. I cannot stress this enough. Fentanyl is a highly addictive, extremely potent synthetic opioid. An incredibly small amount of fentanyl is enough to kill someone. Just 2 milligrams of fentanyl can result in a fatal poisoning. Think about that. Just 2 milligrams. And if you're having trouble picturing that, 2 milligrams fits on a tip of a pencil, or it's approximately 10 grains of salt, common table salt. That's all it takes for someone to die. Methamphetamine has been a scourge on our communities for a long time. It's extremely destructive, synthetic stimulant, and it's highly addictive. It causes, among other things, agitation, anxiety, paranoia, cardiovascular collapse, stroke, and possibly death. The arrests made this week highlight DEA's commitment to stopping the flow of these deadly substances into Florida. This Central Florida-based drug trafficking organization is accused of bringing significant quantities of fentanyl, methamphetamine, and other substances from California into Florida, where it has found our ways onto the streets and into our communities. DEA Miami continues to be committed to working with our law enforcement partners, like those you see behind me today, to thoroughly investigate and dismantle these sophisticated and violent drug trafficking organizations that threaten the safety and the health of our Florida communities. These organizations value their own personal profit over human life. They value their own personal profit over the lives of your families and over the lives of your neighbors. DEA Miami values you, and we value your families, and we remain committed to protecting our communities. Let me be clear. My division does not tolerate these criminals who push this poison into our community. We will continue to relentlessly pursue those who put financial gain and personal profit before the safety of our Florida communities. In closing, I want to thank all of our federal, state, and local leaders standing here with me this morning and our partnerships. I would like to recognize the entire DEA Orlando District Office for their efforts and dedication on these long-term cases such as these that involve incredibly long hours and attention to detail to put together. I thank U.S. Attorney Hamburg for his leadership and support in the prosecution of this case. And I would like to thank you who are here today, who are helping us spread the word of the dangers of the illicit fentanyl and bring awareness to our communities that one pill can kill. Thank you, and I would like to now turn it over to Internal Revenue Special Agent in Charge, Brian Payne.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, U.S. Attorney Hamburg and Special Agent in Charge Reuter. I am Brian Payne, the Special Agent in Charge for IRS Criminal Investigation for the Tampa Field Office. IRS Criminal Investigation is the investigative arm of the IRS and the federal law enforcement agency that specializes in financial investigations. We all know that most criminal activity takes place for one reason: money. And that is why our unique skill set and authority create a powerful force multiplier when it comes to dismantling criminal groups, and in particular drug trafficking organizations like the one charged in today's indictment. As you may know, Mr. Poole served federal prison time in the early 2000s for drug trafficking. I guess the old adage rings true: old habits die hard. And it is alleged that Mr. Poole has returned to his previous illegal activities. According to the indictment, Mr. Poole and other defendants have been running a multi-million-dollar drug ring in this community, in your community, for the past 6 years. But today's arrests, search warrants, and seizures are only the opening strike against these alleged activities, which, although based in Central Florida, have tentacles reaching California, Texas, and the East Coast. So our work will continue from here as we seek to identify all those who have allegedly profited from this drug trafficking organization, and we will not stop until the entire drug trafficking organization has been identified, disrupted, and dismantled. Drug trafficking organizations operate like spokes on a wheel, with the hub connecting the various parts and running the operations. And Mr. Poole allegedly relied on a sophisticated network of operators to conceal and distribute his illegal drugs and launder his money. But the combined network of state, federal, and local law enforcement agencies that stand here today are a force far more sophisticated than any drug trafficking organization, as today's indictments have clearly demonstrated. IRS Criminal Investigation, our federal, state, and local law enforcement partners are proud to stand shoulder to shoulder to aggressively pursue those who are accused of criminal activities in our communities. I want to close today by saying thank you to all the law enforcement agencies that participate in the IRS Criminal Investigation Financial Crimes Task Force and the Drug Enforcement OCDF Task Force. These gentlemen up here, the sheriffs and the chiefs, are a proud partner of ours, and we couldn't do it without the work of their officers and their deputies. So with that, I will turn the time over to Chief of Police for Orlando, Chief Smith.
Thank you. Good morning. I want to start by recognizing and thanking all the agencies that were involved in this investigation. United States Attorney's Office, the DEA, United States Secret Service, ATF, IRS, Orange County Sheriff's Office, Florida Highway Patrol, Seminole County Sheriff's Office, Volusia County Sheriff's Office, Kissimmee PD, Winter Park PD, Castleberry PD, the Metropolitan Bureau of Investigations, and the Orlando Police Department Special Enforcement Division and Crime Center. Successful large-scale investigations like these are not possible without the strong relationships that we share with all of our law enforcement partners. This investigation reached from downtown Orlando to its source of supply in California. These arrests will directly impact violent crime reduction efforts in the city of Orlando and throughout Orange County. Over 80,000 Americans died of fentanyl overdose in 2022. Users of these dangerous drugs often resort to committing crimes that affect the safety and livability of our neighborhoods. From day one, my commitment has been to reduce violent crime in our community. The commitment by all of us standing before you today will continue as part of our collective missions of reducing violent crimes in our communities. Thank you, and I'll give it back to U.S. Attorney Hamburg.
Thank you, Chief Smith, and we'll open it up for a couple questions at this point. Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk to how you got the first break or knew that this was happening?
So we're gonna limit our comments today to what's in the public record. I don't believe that that's in the public record, so I'm not trying to. I wish I could provide some more details about that, but this is an ongoing case. This is a case that's going to be pending in Ocala Federal Court. And I would encourage you to keep up with future developments on the case, because I think those type of facts will be provided as the case progresses.
Can you talk about the potential danger to the public? I know that's scary to hear that that amount of drugs were on commercial flights. God forbid something were to break open, or when you talk about being exposed to something like that, how deadly it is. Just the fear and danger to the public.
Well, and I think Special Agent in Charge Reuter really did an excellent job of talking about fentanyl. And, the reason we're up here today, so many agencies in partnership, is the true and present danger that fentanyl presents to our community. Every year the Florida medical examiners issue that report about the number of fentanyl deaths. And so I cover 35 counties. And the Florida medical examiners will categorize the counties based on number of deaths. And I've got in my district 18 counties that are in the highest category. So we're all focused on that issue like a laser beam. And the threat of fentanyl is real. The one pill campaign, one pill can kill campaign is something people should pay attention to. Because what we found during the course of our work on all sorts of cases, and I'm going to just talk in general here, is a lot of times people who use drugs don't know what they're using. And what we've seen increasingly, and you can see DEA's issued reports about this going back to 2015. Back then it was, well, it's in heroin. In 2018, now it's in cocaine, methamphetamine, and counterfeit pills. And in 2021, they did a report that talked about in the counterfeit pills that DEA has looked at that have fentanyl in them, 4 out of 10 back then had a potentially lethal dose. Well, then a year later, that was updated to 6 in 10. So the threat of fentanyl is real. The threat of methamphetamine is real. And that's why we want to bring attention to this case, to show the community our commitment at every area of entry, at every point of entry into this community here in Central Florida. We're going to try to stop the flow of these drugs.
Forgive me, I don't mean to sound severe on those who bring bags, but how do bags filled with that many amount of drugs make it on
I'm not really here to comment on that. I mean, I can tell you that we are not the first, this is not the first case that has ever existed like this. And one of the things we have as a result of our partnerships is, you know, we do share information, and you know, the security services, do a commendable job. And they've got a lot of threats that they're looking at, but there's always room for improvement. And that's one of the messages I have here today, is we should use this as an opportunity to see what improvement that we can have, because we owe it to our community to stop the flow of drugs through the airport, so people can have peace of mind when they're traveling either to or from the city of Orlando, that they don't have to worry that they're sitting next to someone who maybe has 10 kilos of methamphetamine in a bag in the cargo hold. Other questions?
Lastly, from me, your message to the public, should they feel safe, flying?
Yes, I think they should feel safe flying. And they should know that we are dedicated to working on this. And like I said, this isn't the first case, that the federal government has prosecuted that involves these type of allegations. You know, one reason I wanted to bring some attention to it is I do want people to know that we are working on this, and this has our top of mind, and this has our total and complete attention. And for the purposes of the United States Attorney's Office, it is something that I've dedicated resources, to this issue, so we can have prosecutors who are dedicated and available to do any large-scale drug trafficking case that comes out of the airport. All right. Well, thank you. I don't see any further questions. We appreciate you being here today. Thank you.